Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 4Ps podcast. Here I am on a rainy day in Asheville, North Carolina, and I have to go back and think. This is going to be our next, our for a little while. This is going to be, we're doing when I was at Freedom Fest. So we're going to do a podcast from one of my Freedom Fest interviews. Next week, we're going to step away for a little bit. Then we're going to come back maybe a couple weeks later. But this podcast I love because this man actually became a friend of mine. He is him and his wife both are just probably the kindest individuals you can ever meet. They are very intelligent and they look at things politically in a way that, unfortunately, so many people don't understand. It makes sense. Okay. A lot of politicians, they're not about making sense. They're about making, whatever the hell they make. But Mike ter Maat. ter Maat is a phenomenal person. He really is a great person. He's very smart. He looks at what I'm about ready to talk to you about in a whole different way. Before I talk about that, I want to go to a show on Netflix that you definitely want to watch, especially if you're a history buff, but if you just like good acting, because the actors on this show are phenomenal. It is a mini series. It's four episodes. It's called Death by Lightning. And Death by Lightning is about a man by the name of James Garfield, one of the most forgotten men in U.S. history. One of the most, not the most, but one of the most forgotten men in U.S. history. And it also talks about a guy named Charles Godot. And Charles Godot is also a pivotal man in U.S. history. Infamous because he's the one that actually killed James Garfield. James Garfield was president of the United States for only 6 months. And I believe he got shot 3 months into his term and he lived 3 months after that. But I mean, as far as him legislating from the bed in the White House, I don't think it was that much. And as a matter of fact, I'm not going to tell again, James Garfield's probably one of the most forgotten men in history. So I want you to watch it and you're going to be stunned at the end. You're just going to be like, oh my gosh. But I will say this, who knows what direction this country would have gone or where this country would have gone if a man with the integrity of Garfield would have been president. But another character in this program is a guy named Chester Arthur. And he was the vice president became president, obviously, under James Garfield. Chester Arthur was never, ever, ever elected to any office ever, with the exception of one. That is the vice presidency of the United States. He wasn't even elected president. He was elected vice president. He was chosen by the people at the he was chosen at the National Convention in 1880. And he was chosen strategically so they can get the votes from New York. And because New York at the time was, and still is, a major player in national politics. So anyway, they picked this guy. No one knows who he is. No one's ever voted for him, ever, for anything. And they said, you are nominated President of the United States. Long time ago, the vice presidency was selected by the person who got the second most votes in the presidential election. So, for example, George Washington ran for president. He got the most votes. The second most votes went to John Adams. John Adams became president of the United States. John Adams won presidency. He got the most votes. The guy who gets the second most votes is a guy by the name of Thomas Jefferson. He's vice president of the United States. That's how it went. I think it went that way until Aaron Burr, and Aaron Burr did a lot of stuff, man. He kind of jacked a whole bunch of crap up, but he was, wow. But then so they went to a nomination process and this, that, and the other. Very confusing process. Nowadays, the vice president is selected by a committee that is around the nominee of their political party. That's how it is now. Again, do the American people have anything to do with the selection of vice president? The answer is no. And ter Maat wants to do something about that. He really wants to do something about that. And he is literally running for the nomination of Vice President of the United States. And it's really cool because he really does want to give the American people the choice of who is going to be president if their first choice, for whatever reason. And it's happened. Obviously, we just got finished talking about James Garfield, and he gives the reasons why that should be the case, and he lays out a stellar argument. When we come back, we are going to have vice presidential, I can't even say vice presidential running mate because he's not a vice presidential running mate. The person running for the nomination of Vice President of the United States of America, Mike ter Maat. We'll be right back right after this.
Purpose gives your life direction. Planning turns that direction into action. Passion gives your mission energy. Persistence keeps you moving when the road gets hard. The 4 Ps of You is more than a book. It is a framework for building a life with meaning, focus, and follow through. Discover your purpose. Create your plan. Fuel it with passion. Finish with persistence. The 4 Ps of You by Trunnis Goggins II. Available wherever books are sold.
Welcome to the 4 Ps podcast. Today I am here with a very special guest, very funny guy. We actually talked a little bit before this session, and we talked about his life. He worked with a great person, President of the United States, George
Herbert Walker Bush.
Herbert Walker Bush. So we're going back.
Youngsters, ask your parents.
There you go. He was around for a long time. 1,000 Points of Light. You'll know. It wouldn't be prudent for you not to know who it is. But
good to be with you.
Good to be with you, Mike ter Maat. Mm-hmm. And you are doing something that is. I really want to hear the story. You are running.
Yes.
For the nomination.
Yes.
For the Vice President. Of the United States of America.
Yes.
For the Republican Party.
Yes. Now you've just summarized. We're done. I can leave
finished.
Now. You finished.
And that's our
episode. You made it sound like it was
going
to be big and complex. The reason it's interesting, I think it's interesting for 2 reasons. One is it's never been done before.
Right.
We have made it 250 years as a democratic republic without anyone ever running for. No one has ever run for vice president. And the other reason I think it's interesting is not me personally, right? The reason it's interesting is because the way that we pick VPs in this country is really stupid. As your viewers and listeners are probably well aware, we wait until a few days to go before a national convention, either the Republican side or the Democratic side. And whoever is going to be the presidential nominee just unilaterally decides and announces who it's going to be, who the VP nominee is going to be, to form a ticket. And then no matter how dumb an idea they come up with, right? Kamala Harris. It's going to be Kamala Harris. It's going to be J.D. Vance. Whatever. All of the delegates at the national convention have to pretend like it's genius.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And then they go to a voice vote. Everyone in favor? Aye. Everyone goes, aye. All opposed. I don't even know what happens if you say opposed. I think you fall through a hole in the middle of the convention floor. Yeah. No one says no. So we think that this is a problem for a couple different reasons. One, you don't always get the A team, if you know what I mean. I'm not going to name names. But you don't always get the A team.
I can. but I'll be good. Yeah.
When you let the old man wake up one Saturday morning and say it's going to be this person,
right? And
everyone's shocked, right? And I love me some Dan Quayle.
Right.
I worked for Dan and the president all of 1992. I worked for the White House in 1991. I worked for the re-election campaign. I love those guys. But no one was more shocked than Senator Quayle when George Herbert Walker Bush woke up and said, this is going to be the guy. No process, no legitimate, airing, no vetting, no nothing. The second problem is that it's not good for the party, in the sense that no matter who you pick, a certain proportion of the party is not going to like the idea, right?
Exactly.
It could be a great idea, but if you're feeling like you didn't get your favorite guy, no matter who you pick, someone's not going to like it, and there's no way to work that out, right? There's no democratic process, there's no serious vote, there's no floor vote, there's really no consideration, so you just go away butthurt. And it's not good for fundraising, it's not good for motivating grassroots support. And then the third reason is, in my view, the biggest one. And that is that without a legitimate democratic process behind picking the VP, right, you're picked by a total of one person. When eventually one of these two people, either the Republican nominee or the Democratic nominee for vice president, becomes the vice president after the general election, they immediately begin behaving like mini-me, right?
Yeah.
No independent thought whatsoever.
Exactly.
And at least a part of the reason, maybe the whole reason, is that they feel politically beholden to one person.
Right.
Right?
Right. Absolutely have to be.
And the expectation is huge that you fall into line, right? Even with the most robust examples of differentiation between the president and vice president, like Lyndon Johnson and John Kennedy.
Right.
Right. The most different, right?
Absolutely.
Even Vice President Johnson wasn't out there criticizing the White House or anything like that, right? He mostly fell into line, and if he didn't feel right, he'd just shut the heck up. We're not suggesting that this needs to be chaotic. We're not suggesting that the vice president needs to be an oppositional figure. What we are suggesting is the only other elected official in the entirety of the executive branch, the only guy who can't be fired, guy or gal, who cannot be fired by the president, the only one with an independent political base. It would be nice if that one person could express himself independently, or herself independently, once in a while when it was really important, right? Again, we're not asking for chaos and a big oppositional conflict, but once in a while speak your mind. Perhaps in support of the Constitution, when the White House is sort of meandering in a funny direction, the vice president really should. I mean, after all, the vice president has no role outside of what the Constitution says, which is sit around waiting in case you need to become president. You break a tie once in a while in the Senate. That's pretty much it. Mm-hmm. Your loyalty should be to the Constitution. And once in a while it comes up. I mean, think about how nice it would be to have a vice president who would express himself with regard to the war. We all have different opinions about the war in Iran.
Right.
You and I have discussed Afghanistan and Iraq, and it gets contentious sometimes. It doesn't necessarily need to be contentious, but people feel differently. It would not be a bad thing for the vice president to be able to say once in a while, here's an alternative way to look at this, and to be able to say so in public if it were really important to do so. Or what happens when budget negotiations go a certain way? We're talking about approving a budget that's going to expand the federal debt from 100% of annual income to 130% of annual income of the entire country. That's a big deal.
Absolutely.
It's a big deal. And it's one of the reasons why we're on a path to a financial disaster in this country if the federal government doesn't stop spending so much money. Think about how nice it would be if a vice president were able to speak his mind once in a while. That's what we're talking about. That's why it's so important.
And that is a very interesting thing, and I never thought of it in that way. I know back when the country started, they gave the vice presidency to the second place person.
Right.
Okay.
You were just a loser.
Exactly. And the thing is even at that point, even at it being the second place person, he had no role.
No.
None. They sat.
None.
As a matter of fact, there was I don't know if you've ever seen John Adams, the miniseries.
Yeah.
Beautiful, and they really depicted the vice president in
Yeah.
a great way, where George Washington wouldn't even let him in.
Right.
to the cabinet.
Why would he?
Yeah, and he just
I
sat
defeated you in the election.
Exactly.
Why would I?
And so he would sit
Why
out
do I
in
got to
the
put up with you
lobby.
now?
It was unbelievable. And then, but now we have J.D. Vance
Yep.
with his fraud, the commission that he's going out.
Right. Some important assignments.
It's very important.
Negotiating on behalf of
Yes.
Our foreign policy.
Exactly. You had and I'm sorry to bring this up, but you had the border czar.
Yeah.
A couple of
Yeah.
under Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
You had all these things. There are things going. Al Gore was very instrumental.
Yes.
In the Clinton
Right.
White House. And
And
also,
he's an interesting example because he was chosen to be like Bill Clinton.
absolutely.
Whereas Kamala, for example, was chosen to be different from Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You had an older white guy and a younger black female, and the idea was they could reach out to and they came from different parts of the party, so it was kind of a unified party thing. So even though they were very different people and viewed the world differently in many ways,
Absolutely, yeah.
she still, to your point, was playing an important role.
So exactly. And now
Sometimes.
with you being sometimes is right. Sorry. And I usually never say anything political, but that's it. But then what we have is now we have this very important role. You have a thing where you are now trying to be an elected or at least a nominated, going
Yep.
through a different process.
Yep.
Do you think that if you are successful, the role of the vice president will change yet again from
I don't
sitting
know.
in a room
yeah.
to
yeah,
now?
yeah, yeah. The short answer is I don't know, and maybe the long answer. What we want is for the national delegates to take matters into their own hands and actually think before they vote.
Right.
Right? With a more legitimate and more democratic process behind the VP, will the VP feel more empowered to speak his or her mind in the future? That remains to be seen. So imagine, I'm sure a lot of your viewers are J.D. Vance fans. Probably some aren't, right? I think, like most people, on certain days I think he's terrific, and on certain days he frustrates me. I'm sure that's that way for most Americans. Imagine if you were a big J.D. Vance fan, how much more J.D. you might get, more real J.D. you might get, if he had been chosen by the party as a whole. If the 2,000 delegates in that convention hall weren't merely saying, yeah, because President Trump told them to.
Right.
Imagine if President Trump had said, we're going to defer to the convention, which has not happened in this country in 70 years. The last time the presidential nominee deferred to the convention was in 1956.
Wow.
By the way, youngsters, I'm looking at Zachary over here. No, I don't remember 1956. I had to read about it, okay? So just settle down. But in 56, at the Democratic convention, the presidential nominee deferred to the convention floor to pick the nominee. Interestingly, they almost picked John Kennedy, an extraordinarily young senator from Massachusetts,
Right.
to become the VP nominee. Decided against him and picked Estes Kefauver, an older, better-known guy. Maybe a good choice, maybe not. Anyway, they lost to Dwight Eisenhower, of course, and Kennedy becomes president 4 years later. But imagine if you were to defer to the convention in the future, and imagine if they were to pick J.D. Vance either way. Right? Either because Trump told them to, or because, Vance just had a lot of fans, which he did.
Right.
And continues to have a lot of fans. Imagine if they had picked him. Imagine how much more J.D. Vance you would be getting today.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. For one thing, he would still be more like he used to be. I don't mean to be nasty, but I miss some of the old J.D., you know what I mean? I'm not... Look, when he was chosen, I was the vice presidential nominee of the Libertarian Party. So he and I were, in some sense, competitors.
Right.
But there were things about him, again, that frustrated me, and some things that I admired, and him being sort of an anti-war guy I thought was pretty cool. And imagine if he felt more empowered today, if he knew the whole party were behind him.
Right.
That he might be more willing to speak his mind in public about that, about a host of other issues. It would be a good thing for him. By the way, I would argue it would be a good thing for his political future. he's trying to be, we presume he's trying to become president of the United States.
Absolutely.
Right. We presume, we haven't been told that legally, but we presume that. Imagine if the entire party had voted for him once already for VP. In so much stronger position would he be in today? And it would be a good thing for the Constitution. It'd be a good thing for American political governance. It'd be a good thing all the way around. And one more thing, I'm looking at the youngster, I'm looking at Zach over here, the youngster. The young people are going to, in my guess, I'm going to guess the future, at which I'm notoriously bad. So take everything I say with a grain of salt.
I'm not going to ask you to pick a Super Bowl winner.
No,
okay.
No,
right.
I always pick the Bears.
All right.
And once every 30 years, I'm right, okay? So, but imagine in the future, I think the young people of today are going to look back and they're going to say, that was really stupid, the 100 years that we went through with one person picking the VP, with complete lack of transparency, complete lack of a legitimate or democratic process. Because the young people don't tolerate this concentration of power and authority in the hands of one person, right?
Right.
We are as a society increasingly skeptical of these silly political institutions to which we defer just because that's the way we've always done it.
Right.
The young people aren't going to put up with that.
No.
And the Republican Party is going to have to become younger. It is becoming younger. It's going to move in a more liberty-minded direction.
Right.
And I think this is going to be one of those anachronisms that people just look at and say, that's really dumb. We shouldn't be doing it that way anymore.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to see someone from the Liberty Movement on the ticket. I'd like it to be me, having been a vice presidential nominee on the ticket once already, on the Libertarian Party ticket,
right.
But on the ballot in all of your favorite states. I know something about this.
Absolutely.
So that's my contribution.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to Mike. And I said Mike first term. I should say Mr. ter Maat. But it was a fantastic interview. Great time. He is a very funny person.
Looks aren't everything.
No, I think you're okay.
Looks aren't everything.
One thing I do.
Again, I look over here at Zach. A gorgeous kid. He could be an idiot for all we know.
No,
just because he's gorgeous. You can't judge a book by its cover.
He's my son, so obviously he's not.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he might be a little bit of an idiot.
Yeah, well,
he's my buddy.
Apples falling from trees and all.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But I will say that one thing I do like about this is that he's been in the system. He's been a part of our process, and he finds a way, and he knows that there's something to do to make it better. He knows, and that's what this country's all about. This country's all about, we have a great plan, but sometimes you have to tweak it, sometimes you have to modify it. And thank you very much for taking those steps to make sure that gets done.
You bet. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Thank you so much.
I look forward to staying in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be right back after this. Thank you.
Recruitment has changed. The way you win business should too. Steve Tolan helps recruitment founders, leaders, and consultants across the world build authority, generate quality conversations, and create a more consistent pipeline through modern business development, social selling, and high-performance sales strategies. Through his Change the Game CTG program, Steve delivers practical training, mentorship, and live coaching that combines proven recruitment fundamentals with today's tools, technology, and buyer behavior. No theory, no generic sales scripts, just practical frameworks that help recruiters build trust, win more work, and stay ahead of a rapidly changing market. Change the game, build authority, win better business.
Welcome back to this, the final segment of the 4Ps podcast. I know that you enjoyed what Mike had to say. Very smart. I'm just going to tell you right now. I am absolutely 100% for the people in the party nominating the vice president of the United States. In either party. I think the Democrat Party should do this. I think the Republican Party should do this. I think the Libertarian Party should do this. Any party, all right? They should do this. He brought up, out of everything that he talked about, one thing that he talked about in there that is very important is he said that the vice president, as it stands right now, is a mouthpiece for the President of the United States. He or she is beholden to what that person has to say and has to toe the line of the administration. If we had someone that did not have to toe the line, could there be an added balance to checks and balances? Even in the executive office. Now, I will say this right now. I would venture to say that, and I don't know, I know that there are some states out here, like, for example, the state I live in, North Carolina. North Carolina, the people vote for governor and lieutenant governor. So not this time, I don't think, but I know last time, we had a Republican lieutenant governor and a Democrat as governor. I think it's not like that now. I think it's two Democrats. I hate to say this, it's my state, and I don't even know. Forgive me. I know we have a Democrat governor, but gosh, forgive me for saying that. I could have been more knowledgeable on that. But anyway, but should we vote for vice president and president? I don't think so. I just don't. I think that there would be too much chaos, more chaos than there is right now in Washington, D.C. if we did that. But if we could set up a plan where, hey, this is the ticket. So in other words, the parties, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Comic, whatever, Green, whatever parties you got, they nominate the president through the primary system, and they nominate the vice president through a primary system. That'll be great. Now, once they do that, this is the ticket that the party has to put on. So in this case, it would be like Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, but they were both voted in like that. In other words, Trump did not pick his vice president, in this case. But I think that would be a phenomenal idea, and Mike did put that up. And the thing is I'm beholden, if I'm the vice presidential nominee by the people through that process, if I'm that nominee, then I should very well be the one that runs the thing. Or runs the office and does what I have to do. And even though I will not, totally backstab the president, which in the movie you'll see where Chester Arthur tries to do that. But I will definitely be beholden more to the people than I am to the office. And I think that would be a great idea. And I think he did a good thing. And he does have my support when it comes to that. He has my support, period. He's a really nice guy. I mean, he really is. Him and his wife both are great people. And I wish there were more politicians out there like him. Very genuine. And I would love for him, seriously, to be someone that would be, next in line for the presidency of the United States. I mean, he's that type of person. I wish there were more people with that attitude. Not only running for vice president, but running for school board, for that matter. Next week, like I said, we are going to be talking to a guy by the name of Matthew Hodson. And if you are a Dallas Mavericks fan, you are going to know this individual. If you like the NBL, which is the National Basketball League out of Australia, you're definitely going to know this man. He is a phenomenal basketball player, great person. And we're going to be talking about life after basketball, and we are going to settle the score. Who is the greatest basketball player of all time? And I like his answer. Talk to you next week. You have a good one. Bye-bye.